Hello, good morning. Last class we had discussed about the meaning of business, and this class we'll be just talking to you about the classification of business. The last video itself, I had told you that the business has got two main components. One is the one which produces the goods, and the other one is the which actively takes part. Companies and organizations that actively take part in making those goods and services available to the common man, to the consumer. So the first part of this business, we can call it as the industry, which produces the goods and services required by the consumers. And the second part, which really takes into account how these products and services can be made available to the consumer, is called commerce. Because you can see that the industry specializes in making one product with huge numbers. Toothpaste manufacturer manufacture thousands of tubes of toothpaste in a month, but the consumer is going to make a lot of, he will not require so many toothpastes. He requires one toothpaste in a month. Okay, but he requires one. This toothpaste will be making only toothpaste. He will not make the soaps. But the consumer requires many goods of small quantity, whereas the manufacturer makes one good of one product into multiple quantities. He makes like that. Correct. So the commerce has got the duty of taking the goods from the industry and making it available to the public in small quantities for large number of people. So industry produces large quantity in small variety. Consumers require large variety in small quantity. So that is one of the challenges of commerce. There are so many challenges of commerce by which the products and services have to be made available and bought by the public. So once the consumers buy it, the money gets into the chain, right? Everybody gets his profit. Everybody gets his money which has been spent because the consumer has ultimately bought it for consumption. So when he's bought it for consumption, deriving satisfaction out of it, the retailer gets his margin, profit. The wholesaler gets its margin, the profit, his profit. Correct. The importer, if it is coming from a foreign country, the importers, the businesses which are involved in imports, they get their profits. So we can see that unless the consumers are not buying this product, then the entire chain can get stuck over a period of time, large period of time, if they are not buying. In the industry, there's no use of producing those goods. So the goods which are produced by the industry have to be consumed by the consumer. Correct, and it has to be made available. All the roadblocks that comes in the way of the products being consumed by the consumers uh, has to be taken apart, and the products have to be reach the consumers or customers. So that is the idea of commerce. Correct, the idea. So business has got two main parts: industry and commerce. Okay. So let's look at the classification of industry. Industry can be first combined into classified as primary, secondary, and tertiary industries. A primary industry is the industry which takes all the goods from the natural resources and converts it to an intermediate state. Because we can see that every product that we use comes from natural resources. The laptop which I use, the plastic comes from petroleum. Petroleum is a natural product. Right? Wood, if you are sitting on a table, the wood comes directly from nature. Right? So, or if you consider anything, the headphones that we are using, is plastic. And you're having the chips inside. Ultimately, all these chips are coming from some silicon material, which is natural. Right? So all the goods comes from natural resources that we use, and they are processed into different hundreds of different forms. So the primary industry is the industry which takes these natural resources and makes it into some intermediate state by which can be then used by the secondary industry. The second type of industry is the secondary industry. The second industry uses the goods of the primary industry, which has been processed to some intermediate state, and converts that good into hundreds of different varieties of products which are used by the consumers. For example, we took the case of petroleum where we get the plastic for our laptop, correct? So there is another industry which uses that intermediate state of the petroleum, and that it goes to, one of them is aircraft fuel. It goes to the aircraft industry, right? The diesel goes to the petrol pumps. Petrol go to the petrol pumps. Diesel, kerosene goes somewhere else for usage. So the intermediate state will be a state uh, where the petroleum has been converted to all these particular gases and products which can be then further used in some industry. Right? For example, we take wood industry. Wood industry, the primary industry will be taking the woods. There will be so many companies and businesses which will be involved going to the forest, cutting the woods, and then processing it or making it to a usable state by immersing it in water for a long time, drying it up, cutting it into some specific sizes. And that can be called as the primary industry, which is converting the wood in the forest as a primary to an intermediate state. And the wood from there is taken by the secondary industry and converted into so many different products. For example, wood will go into the furniture industry. Wood will go into the railway industry to make railway coaches and the railway planks, which we can see on which the train runs. Right, then the wood industry also may be getting into some kind of some industrial types for making it into different kinds of products. For example, pencil industry. Correct. So the wood which is being taken, that intermediate state, the logs which have been processed and kept, and that is being taken for making the finished goods. The finished goods which is used by the consumer is made by the secondary industry. So the industry can be divided into primary industry, secondary industry, and the third classification is tertiary industry. Tertiary industry is the service industry. For example, hair cutting is a tertiary industry, or we can say about hotels or tourism. All these are tertiary industries, right? They are more towards service oriented kind of work where there is no tangible product to be made and to be bought by the consumer. The production and consumption takes place simultaneously, as we say it. Go to a haircut, the production of that, the haircutting and the consumption by the consumer takes place simultaneously. In a hotel, also the food is made and prepared, and even though there's no tangible products as such, or very less, it is consumed there and then. So the consumer has to be present there at that site for the consumption. Correct? The consumer has to be present. If you're buying some product, you can take it home, package it, and use it as you wish. Whereas in a service industry, you have to be present there and get that service. So those kinds of industries where which is highly service oriented in nature, we call it tertiary industry. So industry can be classified as primary, secondary, and tertiary industry. Further, let's look at the classification of primary industry. Primary industry we defined as the industry which is taking the goods from the natural resources and converting it to some intermediate state for further usage by the secondary industry into finished goods. But primary industry can also be classified as extractive industry or genetic industry. Right? And an extractive industry is dealing with the nature in an extractive manner. It is extracting something from the nature. And it is primarily dealing with non-organic activities like mining or petroleum drilling or even fishery we can consider, or the uh, cutting of the forests. All these are extracting the goods of the nature. That is called extractive industry, extractive primary industry. Next is genetic industry. Mostly the livestock and the living organisms belong to this industry, the genetic industry, right, where there is not only an extraction process but also a nurturing process. For example, you are doing fishery, you are growing the fishes also, and then you are taking that fish. Animal husbandry, you are dealing with the uh, animals in such a way that you're taking care of them, grooming them, reproduce, they're getting reproduced, and also you're dealing with some business activities like selling them, like in a poultry farm. All these things are genetic industries. They are dealing with the nature in a genetic all the living organisms, and they're taking care of that, and they're also doing business out of it. That's called genetic industry. Whereas extractive industry is mostly dealing with the non-living resources, and it is extracting from the nature. Some industries in living organisms are also considered extractive, uh, like fishing, where if you are not growing the fishes, you are just extracting. I think it mostly become an extractive kind of industry. But primarily, we can say the living organisms and taking care, nurturing, and doing business is genetic industry. An extractive industry is it's got its own peculiarities because the resources are limited. So it has got its own issues when we deal with that. So it's an extractive industry, just extracting from the nature, right? Now we come to the classification of secondary industry. A secondary industry is can be classified primarily as manufacturing industry or construction industry. We said that the secondary industry takes the goods from the intermediate states and converts it into finished goods usable by the consumers. Correct? So they can be manufacturing type or they can be construction type of goods. The manufacturing industry is the one which is manufacturing our televisions, laptops, all these things are manufactured. Right? Their manufacturing is taking place. They are made somehow, and they're all tomato sauces or ketchups or jams or shampoos. All these are manufacturing. Right? They're all manufacturing in some way. Then the other type which we classify the secondary industry is the construction industry. The construction industry is they got the peculiarity that it is in one place, right? Whereas when you're manufacturing the goods, you can take your laptops, you can take your scooters and go to different places. It's a movable. But its construction has got its issues and its specific characteristics, and it is characterized by the thing that it is one place. For example, construction of buildings, construction of apartments, construction of dams, construction of roads, construction of other infrastructural ports and aerodromes, right? So all these can be airports. So all these are can be considered like the construction industry. So there's a construction industry in the manufacturing, and there is a in the industry secondary industry where the consumers use it, and also it has got a manufacturing industry. So this is the classification of the secondary industry, right? We can further classify the manufacturing industry into analytical, synthetical, processing, or assembling kind of industries. The manufacturing where we make goods like laptops and vehicles can be further classified into analytical, synthetic, processing, or assembly form of manufacturing. Right? In analytical form of manufacturing, the one specific good is converted and are analyzed into many products. That is how the peculiarity of that manufacturing takes place. Classic example of that is petroleum, where petroleum is analyzed and distilled into its products of kerosene, diesel, petrol, aircraft fuel, and tar, and other products. So the analytic it separates out from one main product or raw material. It separates out and gets many products. That is how that manufacturing takes place. That is called as the analytical form of manufacturing. Next is a synthetic form of manufacturing, where you take so many raw materials, combine together, and you make a final product out of it. For example, classic examples of that is cement. The primary equipment are sand is there, coal, sand is there, and other lime, soda ash, which we call lime. All these are there. These are primary raw materials. There's so many other raw materials also which goes into making of the cement. Then you are having the processing industry. The processing industry is characterized by there's no specific steps in that. Just you put the raw materials come together and you get the finished goods, even probably packaged, and you get it. For example, the manufacturing of soaps, manufacturing of jams and shampoos, or tomato sauce, or all the ketchup and all these things are a process industry, milk processing, we can call it. Raw material is taken and then ultimately we get it in packet. There are no specific steps to that. So that kind of industry, we can call it as processing form of manufacturing. And the last one is assembly form of manufacturing. Assembling is that the different components will come and they're assembled into the product. For example, vehicles, the chassis comes, the steering comes, or the engine will come, the tires will come, the cushions will come, and everything is manufactured, assembled into a vehicle. Laptops, also assembling form of the industry. So thank you. Next, in the next video, we will look at the classification of commerce.